What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared Haas, and welcome back into another edition of a NASCAR Mailbox. This weekend, we're going to take a look back at the action at Martinsville Speedway. And now, this first question comes from American Walmart's 3565. They ask, Larson has 6 wins and he can't fight for a championship. Elliott has been the most consistent and he can't fight for a championship. Hamlin has good runs at Vegas and Homestead. He should be at Phoenix too. Well, unfortunately, the playoff field is set by the rules that were laid out by NASCAR at the beginning of the season. And those who qualified for the playoffs is Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney. And if you look at their stats, Chase Elliott, best average finish this season, really consistent, hasn't won except for the race at Texas earlier this season. Understandably, Larson, the 6 wins, but again, you've got to understand how much that Homestead mistake has been haunting him. And you have obviously Denny Hamlin, playoff points, losing them with the Bristol motor issue, with the seal being broken. That was a big hit, but that wasn't the over deciding factor. It was still wasn't able to perform up to par. You almost had to win and get in. Hamlin had finishes of third, fifth, and eighth during this playoff run. And the issues with stage points, that wasn't enough to get Hamlin into the next round. And understandably, fans were frustrated with the system this past weekend, is because the champion is the person who performs the best in the eyes of basically the sport. You say this is the person during those bright moments, they say, okay, this is what happened. And I look at the playoff field. Reddick performed well, slipped in the playoffs. He's had a lot of finishes at the 20th and first uh, since his win at Michigan. I think there's like 6 or 7 finishes at 20th at worst. And in this playoff round, he had a finish of 34th, 35th, and first. Three finishes of 30th, two finishes of 30th or worse, and a win. And the win got him in, and that's how he's in the championship four. But he's performed well this season. Same Ryan Blaney. He's been Ryan Blaney type of season, a little bit more DNFs compared to his last season. William Byron, a consistent force with Hendrick Motorsports, not something they're too far off the pace. They're able to bring speed. Joey Logano is the big outlier with this type of situation. If you compare his season, if you say one race could pivot everything, an outlook, look at Nashville Superspeedway. If Kyle Busch doesn't get involved in that late wreck and Joey Logano's field doesn't hold, and you have Kyle Busch win that race and Joey Logano gets second, now all of a sudden the difference between Joey Logano and Kyle Busch, mind you, Busch is having one of his worst seasons in his NASCAR Cup Series career basically since his rookie season in 2005. Joey Logano would only have one more top 10, and Logano would have that playoff push. Their average finishes in top fives, and that would be basically the same. And if you look back at this season, Logano has not led a lot of laps, and neither has Kyle Busch. And you're not saying this was the most dominant car week in, week out, but he was the driver that was able to use the system that NASCAR provided to be crowned the champion. Now, off season, there may be discussions with that with the playoffs. Who knows? But this is what the system has been dealt with, is because you have to win to get in. This is what matters. Because again, you can't be running top five, top 10 in this, especially this round of 8. You could do that in the previous rounds, but in here, you had to basically win to get in. And that's why a lot of high stakes came into Martinsville and what we saw on Sunday. And honestly, we had some penalties after here. Now, NASCAR this week decided to lay down the law after what happened at Martinsville to 3 different teams involved in 2 different scenarios. You had the Chevy drivers of Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain. All these drivers were fined $100,000, as well as the teams, and their teams had a team executive, a spotter, and their crew chief all suspended for the next race at Phoenix Raceway. Understandably, these suspensions are not really much of a hindrance. Those team personnels they've been in the past allowed to able to go to their team headquarters. You had that with Bubba Wallace when he was suspended from his Cup race back in 2022 when he was involved with altercation with Kyle Larson. He was there in 23XI's headquarters. So it's not going to be like goodbye, Freddie Kraft, or goodbye, Booty Barker, or goodbye, Phil Surgeon, Brandon McReynolds. They can still access that team data. Now, they're not going to be there at the racetrack. They're not going to be on the radio with their drivers during the race, but they can still relay that information. So it's not like a huge loss. Still definitely a barrier of communication that is involved, but it's not, a concern. But the thing is like I said, probably the $100,000 is to the drivers and the teams. It's still okay with the drivers. I don't think enough with the teams, considering that you had Chevrolet trying to get a spot in, and those teams rely on Chevy to get that information, especially trying to be a tier one type of team. And if they're going to try to do anything they can to make the Chevy brand look better, we've seen the manufacturer game. Parker Retzlaff's a perfect example. You saw Chevy backlash against Parker Retzlaff after he didn't push Kyle Busch. Instead, he pushed Harrison Burton. He was trying to win the race. He wasn't trying to make sure a Chevy won, and he got the backlash from Chevy. We're seeing this manufacturer game because that's what matters. They want to make sure it looks good on Sunday with the Chevy or Ford or Toyota logo in victory lane. So not really much with the teams. You have to more punish the manufacturers, but the manufacturers support NASCAR quite a bit. And there's only 3 manufacturers in NASCAR, and you don't want to be chasing away these manufacturers that are already in there. Sadly, though, it does not put an end to this race manipulation stuff with the penalties that were handed out this week. They're going to sting a little bit, but Chevy's going to try to continue to make sure they win the most round races and win the championship. Toyota and Ford are going to try to do the same. So I don't expect to see this go away at the last of this yet. Thank you very much for watching. As always, like and subscribe. That really helps get the content out to you guys. And until next time, as always, make sure to have a great race weekend.
Kevin Nix with FrontStretch.com. Come back soon for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.